I think we start with the cold hard facts and what we've heard is that Barca have agreed personal terms with Raphinha of Leeds United, still need to agree the deal with Leeds, and it depends or not whether or not they get relegated, what that number is going to be, and that's the important number there. Barca have reportedly had an initial offer of 35 million for the Brazilian, rejected by Leeds, and that update coming from Sport, who have said that the EPL club have told Barca that they have to pay the 75 million euro release clause if they want Raphinha, who is currently valued. It's funny that Barca provided 35 million because he's valued by Transfermarkt at 35 or 36 million pounds, which is a bit more than 35 million euros, but you see how that's the initial offer. The agent of Raphinha happens to be Deco, former Barcelona midfielder Deco. So there is a relationship between Laporta and Deco. And Barcelona should absolutely, in my opinion, move on if Leeds is continuing to ask 75 million if they're going to be relegated, which let me answer that one real quick. Leeds is currently in 16th place on 29 points, 7 points clear of Watford in 18th. Everton on 25 points is in between the two, that being the relegation zone, and Leeds United. And Newcastle is 31 points, Brentford on 30. So those two could also be dragged down into that relegation fight. It's a 25 million euro release clause for Raphinha if Leeds is to get relegated. So the first question before anything else, Mike, is do you think Leeds United, from what you've seen, the limited bit you've seen of Leeds United this year, could potentially be relegated?
I think they're going down. I really do think they're going down. Yeah, because I mean, I haven't seen much of Jesse March's Leeds, but I have seen
only one match. So
yeah, exactly. But I have seen some of their matches when Bielsa was still around. And my feeling about this club altogether is that Bielsa was getting the best out of these players. And now that he's gone, they're going to have to get prepared for an entire season in the championship, trying to make it back to the Premier League. Now, time will tell. There's about 10 matches left in the Premier League, so anything is still possible. But my feeling is that there's a strong chance that they might be going down. I think that these players were really buying Bielsa's project, and unfortunately, it didn't work out the way that it has worked out in the past few years. And Raphinha is basically one of very few diamonds in that squad. The rest of that squad is made up of championship players. That squad hasn't really been renewed all that much since getting promoted to the Premier League. We already knew that Raphinha had to move on at some point. Now, I think that if I'm in the shoes of Leeds United right now, I wouldn't gamble too much. I would take the 36 or 35 million right now, rather than being forced to potentially take the 25 million 10 matches from now. But then again, I'm not in their brains. I don't know how they want to manage this. I don't know how they want to go about this. One thing that we know for sure, one thing that we've read a lot about in the past few days, is that Raphinha is not talking to any other club. He's concentrating on Barcelona's offer, and he's basically agreed to terms with Barcelona right now. So everything that the club has to do right now is either reject or accept that offer. And if they're waiting, the choice will be made for them.
Well, I think this is just my American bias showing, but I have a little more faith in Jesse March. I think he's a good enough manager to keep this talent.
Oh, I'm from Montreal, Dan. You know how much I love Jesse March, right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I think that he's good enough manager to keep them from the drop. You know, I'm not saying they're going to be in the Europa League next year. I'm not saying anything. I'm saying that I think he can save them because, again, they're 7 points clear right now of the relegation zone. And I think them not getting relegated, to me, says more about Watford, Burnley, and Norwich City than it does actually about Leeds. And that might be the only thing also saving Everton this season as well with Frank Lampard. And the only way it does go wrong, I think, at this point, is if Marsh does a Bob Bradley at Swansea City and ruins the name of American managers in the EPL for another few years. And, you know, he didn't start the first game, that being Raphinha, under new manager Jesse March, if you look that up, because he was out with COVID protocol. So that's why you're not seeing him. It's not because the club has chosen to drop him because of some kind of behavior or nonsense, anything like that. Under no circumstances will Jesse March drop his leading goal scorer, the one guy who's been the guy for Leeds this year. And now, with that, I want to transition speaking about the kind of player he is, because it is a bit puzzling. He's a guy that's been on my radar for a number of years now. He's 25. So obviously I've heard him, I've seen him play before, but it did take him some time to find his feet and learn how to make an impact. And to that point, I would consider him a late bloomer. And I'm not going to compare him to Kevin De Bruyne or Mohamed Salah, but that's what we're talking about. That's the actual like timeline of, vaulting up to, not to say he's a superstar in the game yet, but from just a player that where are they going to fit, where are they going to have their final stop, where they become the thing that they could be. And it took obviously Salah and De Bruyne. They were both in Chelsea shirts. You could find them. And then it took them to changing their club and getting another opportunity and getting their biggest, being given a bigger role. And for Raphinha, it really did take until Leeds, where he has 9 goals, 3 assists to lead the team. And his story, he moves from his boyhood Brazilian club, Avaia, the youth academy. I'm probably saying that wrong. They're not very well known, to Vitoria in Portugal in 2016, age 19. 2 years later, he moves to Sporting CP, and the next September moves to Rennes in France. Then in October of 2020, so 13 months later, he moves to Leeds. So that's a lot of hops, a lot of jumps from the age of 19 to 23. And he just hop, and got to the place he is now with Leeds. Do you want to, I guess I want to talk about what he is, or first I want to ask your impressions of him, Mike, before I go off on the metrics and all the blah, 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 boring stuff.
Of course, he's a skillful player. You could tell that he's got the natural talent. He's even got some of the flashes that we have seen before from talented Brazilian wingers. The only thing that would be missing for me is seeing him in a context where he could flourish, where he could show what he's capable of, and that hasn't really been the case at Leeds. Obviously, how would he fit in a system where he's surrounded with superstars like in Barcelona?
Yeah.
How would he fit in a system where he doesn't always have the ball, where he is not basically, where the system is not built around him? And most importantly, and that's the one thing that that worries me a little bit, based on our history, right? How would he fit outside of the field in Barcelona? Would he be tempted by the nightlife and everything that the city of Barcelona has to offer? And not to generalize, but Brazilian players are known to like the finer things that the city of Barcelona has to offer. And I can name a few, like Neymar, like Ronaldinho, only to name those. Is he going to be distracted with these sorts of off-field activities, or is he going to be a consummate professional like Rivaldo was, for example? And that's the one thing that worries me, because we don't know much about him personally. We know what he's capable of on the field to a certain extent, but I don't know. Like, I'll give you an example, and I'm not talking about a player who stayed in Barcelona for very long. I'm not talking about someone who plays the same position, but still, when Arthur came over, we had heard a lot of good things about him. He was obviously very talented. And then when he came over to Barcelona, then we started learning things about him personally. And, it's definitely something that worries me a little bit. But as far as pure talent, he would be a good signing, no question about it, especially at a price of 25 to 35 million euros.
Well, you didn't mention the OG Romario, the guy who set the gold standard of
course,
of Brazilian extracurricular activity in the city of Barcelona. So as a player, yeah, I don't have a lot of insane concerns because of where I think he would fit on a potential depth chart. So he does rely heavily on his right foot on that right wing, but his left foot isn't a complete zero either. He can shoot with his left and he can switch to play with his left, but the accuracy does go down a bit. And I think the other thing that Xavi would kind of be frustrated with him, I think Barca fans in general would be frustrated with him, is that he picks his head up rather late. He does shoot first, pass second, but he does start his position out wide, which makes a lot of sense in Xavi's system. His positional defending is fine to better than fine, and I'd say better than Dembele's. And his square balls also leave something to be desired, but so do Adama Traore. So you're really asking those questions of how does he compare to what Barca is currently seeing now? And the players that he has similar, talking about boring advanced metrics here, the non-penalty XG, shot creating actions, dribbles completed, and all that. Here's some players he compares to: Hakim Ziyech of Chelsea, Domenico Berardi of Sassuolo, Bruno Fernandes of Man United, Christian Teo of Real Betis, and Zanajai of Real Sociedad. Those are the players that he actually profiles the most to, which is really interesting because of especially Bruno Fernandes, who is just an attacking midfielder. But it's all guys with, I think, the exception of Teo, who really like to cut in and can be dangerous once they're in field. And not that Dembele isn't, but Dembele is strictly kind of a winger. That's where he's going to have his best work. That's where he's going to draw two men. And before it is that Raphinha brings that second guy in the Premier League, he's often trying to cut in before that second guy comes to the double. And if he does get the double, he tends to try to split them, which, is a choice. It's a choice. I don't know how well Xavi's going to be cool with all those things. And going back to the point of Dembele and comparing him like for like to Ousmane Dembele, I had trouble looking at their metrics because these are two different teams. As you said, Raphinha is the guy for Leeds, who are not a very good squad in the EPL. While Dembele has a particular role, he has to do his job for Xavi's Barcelona, who are flying high at the moment where all those metrics are being seen. So here's the thing. Dembele is insane number-wise at expected assists, shot creating actions, progressive carries, dribbles completed, total shots, and touches. He's in the 95th percentile or higher in all of those categories. And Dembele receives the ball in really dangerous areas. And his passing completion of 76%, which puts him in just the 49th percentile of wingers, is leagues better than Raphinha's 64% rather, which puts him in just the 4th percentile of passing completed. So that's something that, right, the Xavi's immediately going to circle, but it's also, what is his usage? What is his role at Leeds? His role at Leeds is to make things happen. And so he's not going to release the ball until he's gotten as far to goal as possible, and he's probably put a teammate behind the ball because he's so far in front of it. So this is where I'm not sure I can judge Raphinha fairly, because he doesn't receive the ball in dangerous areas. He touches it just 4.53 times per 90 in the opponent's box, while Dembele does that 7.13 times. And as I said, Raphinha is way better than Dembele at defending. He's beat Dembele in all defensive metrics by a sizable mark: pressures, tackles, interceptions, blocks, and clearances. But to immediately say that doesn't matter, Leeds also doesn't have the ball, and Barca usually does. So those numbers are a lot lower for almost all Barca players at the respective positions.
There's that, and there's also the fact that he played for Bielsa for a couple of years, and that'll drastically improve one's defensive statistics.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I would be curious to know how much input Xavi will have in those decisions, because all signs point towards Xavi wanting to do the impossible to keep Dembele. Now, is the front office going to listen to him? Are they going to really make that effort to try to keep Dembele in town? Because between Dembele and Raphinha, I'm convinced that Xavi would prefer to keep Dembele. He's already part of the system. He's already well liked by his teammates, despite what people may think. And so far, whenever he was called upon, whenever he was relied upon, he delivered. That being said, if Xavi is put in a situation where he has no choice but to say goodbye to Dembele, how happy will he be with Raphinha? Will Raphinha fit in Xavi's plan, and how much input did Xavi have in the decision to make an offer to Raphinha? And those are questions that can only be answered behind closed doors, obviously, but I would be very curious to know how important Raphinha would be for Xavi.
Well, my question for Raphinha and what he's worth, and I think the hardest part is the final number that is agreed with Leeds, because it's on a free agent, dictates, I think, what his role, not even what his role is, but what the expectations for his role are, right? Because right now he has been the star guy for Leeds. And I have to ask what that price is going to be. Because just like Kessie and Christensen, though those two are free, with the current form of the team, Christensen would need to impress to take out PK and Eric Garcia. And I'm plugging Araujo in as the everyday starter. And then Kessie probably isn't starting over Pedri or De Jong, and maybe not even Gavi. And a big if, Ansu Fati does return in April and puts all of the injuries behind him, even without Dembele, that front line is probably Aubameyang, Ferran Torres, Ansu, Memphis, and then potentially Raphinha, depending on how quick he assimilates. So you are looking at, and Memphis might be gone in the summer based on his role, but if he's not, you're looking at a really deep line. And if Raphinha comes on 25 million euros and is one of 6 players, or rather 5 players in a really dangerous 3-man attack with, again, Aubameyang, Torres, Ansu, Memphis, and then Raphinha, that is totally fine. And I can tell you that the player he is at Leeds won't underwhelm there. You're not going to be the number one guy at a club like Leeds and then fit so well, right? Because I think the other argument for Raphinha is, as I said, he doesn't perfectly fit. But this is not Coutinho. This is not Griezmann. This is not a player where I'm worried, is this going to make sense? I mean, even Arturo Vidal made a ton of sense coming for Valverde, but then the second there was a change in manager, you went, well, Arturo Vidal doesn't make sense anymore if you're going to play even a little bit different than what you did prior. And so I think Raphinha makes enough sense for 25 to 35 million to be good enough, to be the guy. And then he also winds up at 25 is an insurance policy for Ansu's injury, for Aubameyang being 32, and for Memphis potentially leaving even in January or wanting out for some reason because he's not getting the starts of the minutes he would want. So to me, again, the 35 million is about fair in this market for just how good he's been at Leeds United. I think he's earned that.